Amos was a shepherd from Tekoa in Judah. He received visions from God concerning Israel during the reigns of Uzziah of Judah and Jeroboam of Israel. The Lord roared from Zion. His voice thundered from Jerusalem. The pastures mourned, and the top of Carmel withered. God declared his judgment on Damascus. He would punish them for their cruelty with iron tools. Their cities would fall, and their king would be taken away. Gaza was next. For taking entire communities into exile and selling them, God would send fire upon their walls and destroy their strongholds. Tyre too would face fire. They betrayed a covenant of brotherhood and delivered others to their enemies. Edom was condemned for pursuing his brother with a sword and showing no compassion. God would set fire to Teman and destroy its fortresses. Ammon ripped open pregnant women to expand their borders. God would destroy their walls and burn their palaces amid war cries. Moab burned the bones of Adam's king into lime. God would bring fire upon Moab, and its ruler would perish in the midst of battle. Judah rejected the law of the Lord. Their lies led them astray. Fire would consume Jerusalem's strongholds. Israel was condemned for many sins. They sold the righteous for silver and the needy for a pair of sandals. They trampled the heads of the poor into the dust and denied justice to the oppressed. Father and son used the same woman, profaning God's name. They reclined beside every altar on garments taken in pledge. They drank wine in the house of their God bought with unjust fines. God reminded them that he destroyed the Amorites before them. The Amorites were tall like cedars and strong like oaks, but he crushed them. He brought Israel out of Egypt and led them through the wilderness for 40 years to possess the land. He raised up prophets from their sons and Nazarites from their youth. But the people silenced the prophets and commanded the Nazarites to drink wine. God declared that he would crush them as a cart crushes grain under its weight. The swift would not escape. The strong would not prevail. The warrior would not save his life. The archer would not stand his ground. The fleet of foot would not escape. The horseman would not save himself. Even the bravest warriors would flee naked on that day. This was the word of the Lord. The Lord summoned Israel to hear this message. He spoke against the entire family he brought up from Egypt. God said he had known them alone among all the families of the earth. Therefore, he would punish them for all their sins. Two people do not walk together unless they agree. A lion does not roar without prey. A trap does not spring unless it is baited. When disaster comes to a city, it is the Lord who has caused it. The Lord does nothing without revealing his plan to his prophets. The lion has roared. Who will not fear? The Lord has spoken. Who can but prophesy? Proclaim to the fortresses of Ashdod and Egypt. Gather on the mountains of Samaria and witness the great unrest and oppression within her. God declared that his people do not know how to do right. They store up violence and robbery in their fortresses. An enemy would surround the land. He would pull down Israel's strength and loot her fortresses. Only a few remnants would be saved. As a shepherd rescues 2 legs or an ear from a lion, so few would remain in Samaria. Listen and testify against the house of Jacob. God would punish Israel for their sins. On that day, God would destroy the altars of Bethel. The horns of the altar would be cut off and fall to the ground. He would tear down winter houses and summer houses. The houses of ivory would perish. The mansions would be ruined. Hear this word, you cows of Bashan on Mount Samaria, women who oppress the poor and crush the needy, and say to their husbands, bring us something to drink. The Lord had sworn by his holiness. The days were coming when they would be taken away with hooks. Every last one of them. They would go straight through breaches in the wall and be cast out toward Harmon. God mocked their false worship. Go to Bethel and Sign. Multiply transgressions in Bring your sacrifices every morning and your tithes every 3 days. Boast about your free will offerings. This is what you love to do, O people of Israel. Yet God had given them cleanness of teeth and lack of bread, but they did not return to him. He withheld rain and caused drought, yet they did not return to him. He struck their crops with blight and mildew. Locusts devoured their gardens, yet they did not return to him. He sent plagues like those in Egypt. He killed young men with the sword. Still, they did not return to him. He overthrew some as he did Sodom and Gomorrah, but they did not return to him. Therefore, God would now act. Prepare to meet your God, O Israel. He who forms the mountains and creates the wind, who reveals his thoughts to man, who turns dawn to darkness and treads on the heights of the earth. The Lord God Almighty is his name. Hear this word, O house of Israel. It is a lamentation. The Virgin of Israel has fallen, never to rise again. She lies forsaken on her land, with no one to lift her up. God declared that the city that marched out 1,000 would be left with 100. The one that marched out 100 would be left with 10. Seek the Lord and live. Do not seek Bethel or Gilgal or Beersheba, for they shall come to nothing. Seek the Lord and live, lest he break out like fire in the house of Joseph and devour it, with no one to quench it. You who turn justice into bitterness and cast righteousness to the ground. Him who made the Pleiades and Orion, he turns darkness into morning and darkens the day into night. He calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the land. The Lord is his name. He brings destruction upon the stronghold and lays the fortress low. You hate the one who reproves in court. You despise him who speaks the truth. You trample the poor and forced him to give you grain. You have built stone mansions, but you will not live in them. You have planted lush vineyards, but you will not drink their wine. I know your many offenses and your great sins. You oppress the righteous and take bribes. You deprive the poor of justice in the courts. Therefore, the prudent keep silent in such times, for the times are evil. Seek good and not evil, that you may live. Then the Lord God Almighty will be with you. Hate evil, love good, and establish justice in the gate. Perhaps the Lord will have mercy on the remnant of Joseph. There will be wailing in all the streets and cries of sorrow in every public square. Farmers will mourn, and mourning will be heard from all corners of the land. Woe to those who long for the day of the Lord. That day will be darkness and not light. It will be as if a man fled from a lion only to meet a bear, or entered his house and leaned on the wall only to be bitten by a snake. The day of the Lord will be darkness and not light, pitch dark, without a ray of brightness. God hated their religious festivals. He did not delight in their assemblies. Even though they brought burnt offerings and grain offerings, he would not accept them. He would not even look at the peace offerings of their fattened animals. He commanded them to take away the noise of their songs. He would not listen to their harps. Instead, let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Did you bring sacrifices and offerings during your 40 years in the wilderness? O house of Israel, you carried the shrine of your king and the pedestal of your idols. Therefore, God would send them into exile beyond Damascus. Woe to those who are at ease in Zion and feel secure on Mount Samaria. They lie on beds of ivory and lounge on couches. They eat lambs from the flock and calves from the store. They sing idle songs and invent instruments like David. They drink wine by the bowlful and anoint themselves with expensive oils, but they are not grieved over the ruin of Joseph. Therefore, they will be the first to go into exile. The Lord swore by himself. He abhorred the pride of Jacob and hated his strongholds. God declared that if 10 people were left in a house, they would all die. If someone came to burn the bodies and asked, "Is anyone with you?" the answer would be, "No." Then silence, for the name of the Lord must not be mentioned. The Lord would command the great house to be smashed into pieces and the little house into bits. Do horses run on rocks? Does one plough there with oxen? Yet they turn justice into poison and righteousness into bitterness. They rejoiced in their own strength and claimed they had taken cities by their own power. But God would raise up a nation against them, and they would be oppressed from Labahamath to the brook of the Arabah. This is what the Lord showed Amos. He formed locusts just after the king's harvest. They devoured all the grass. Amos cried out, "Sovereign Lord, forgive. How can Jacob survive? He is so small." So the Lord relented. "It shall not happen," he said. Then the Lord showed him a great fire. It devoured the deep and threatened to consume the land. Amos cried again, "Sovereign Lord, stop. How can Jacob survive?" The Lord relented again. "This too shall not be." Then the Lord showed him a plumb line. He stood by a wall with a plumb line in his hand. God said, "I am setting a plumb line among my people. I will spare them no longer." The high places of Isaac would be destroyed. The sanctuaries of Israel would be ruined. Amaziah, the priest of Bethel, sent word to Jeroboam, saying Amos had conspired against him. He told Amos to flee to Judah and never prophesy in Israel again. Amos replied that he was no prophet nor a prophet's son. He was a shepherd and a dresser of sycamore figs. But the Lord took him from tending the flock and told him to prophesy to Israel. Amos declared that Amaziah's wife would become a harlot in the city. His sons and daughters would fall by the sword, and Israel would go into exile. Then the Lord showed Amos a basket of summer fruit. God said, "The end has come for my people. I will spare them no longer." Songs in the temple would become wailings. Many would die. The merchants longed for the Sabbath to be over, so they could sell grain and cheat with dishonest scales. They bought the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of sandals. The Lord swore he would never forget what they had done. The land would tremble, and everyone. The sun would set at noon, and the earth would darken in broad daylight. Feasts would turn to mourning, songs to lamentation. God would send a famine, not of bread or water, but of hearing the words of the Lord. People would stagger from sea to sea, searching for the word of the Lord but not finding it. Beautiful young women and strong young men would faint from thirst. Those who swore by false gods would fall and never rise again. God stood by the altar and commanded destruction. The tops of the pillars would be struck and the thresholds shaken. None would escape. Though they dug to Sheol or climbed to heaven, God would find them. If they hid on Mount Carmel or at the bottom of the sea, he would bring disaster. If they went into exile, he would command the sword to slay them. God's eyes were on the sinful kingdom. He would destroy it from the face of the earth. Yet he would not totally destroy the house of Jacob. He would sift Israel among the nations, yet not one kernel would fall to the ground. All the sinners would die by the sword. Those who said disaster would not overtake them. But in that day, God would raise up the fallen booth of David. He would repair its breaches and restore its ruins, that they may possess the remnant of Edom, and all the nations who bear his name. Days would come when the plowmen would overtake the reaper. New wine would drip from the mountains and flow from all the hills. God would bring back his people from captivity. They would rebuild ruined cities and live in them. They would plant vineyards and drink their wine. They would make gardens and eat their fruit. God would plant them in their land, never again to be uprooted. This was the word of the Lord. Thank you for watching. The Bible continues.